Okay. Welcome everyone. This is a game and VSGI speaker series, and I'm very happy to welcome Mr. Alex James as our guest speaker today. Alex is a game designer and developer with a strong background in gameplay systems, Unity development, and collaborative production. He has contributed to multiple projects in roles ranging from programmer to producer, including serving as production manager of the Game Analysis and Design Interest Group, GADIG, at George Mason University. Most recently, Alex has been actively involved with the Virginia Serious Game Institute, where he has applied his skills to development of impactful, purpose-driven interactive experiences. His independent project, Clean Cop, developed during the Progress at Play 2023 competition, earned third place among over 70 teams and has been showcased at major events such as AwesomeCon, MAGFest, and Smithsonian American Art Museum Arcade. And Alex will deliver a guest lecture titled Making Game That Teach, a look into serious game production today. Without further ado, and please welcome Alex.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'll be giving a brief talk about my experience in serious game production, what you might be able to expect if you haven't uh, worked at all in serious game production, and just some general kind of know-how and information about the whole process. So, Professor Dom gave a great introduction, but I'll just go over some stuff real quick. My name's Alex. I graduated in 2025 with a BFA in computer game design. Um, I specialize in production and programming. I started as a programmer, but through some various individual projects, I got a good grasp of a lot of the intricacies of each of the disciplines required in game design. That eventually led to me um, doing production, and I think that's where I've kind of found my calling, and it's something I really enjoy doing. A lot of my work includes stuff like that. So with VSGI, I was originally brought on as a programmer for a project, but my role eventually kind of grew into including some kind of production esque responsibilities and alongside developing the game. I also did serve as GADIG as the production manager, and I worked on some other serious games, specifically with Hard Hat Games as a programmer. So I got a brief agenda of what we're going to go over today. Starting off with what serious games are, moving on to some development differences from traditional games to serious games, some projects I've worked on, uh, showcasing that in some gameplay, uh, the production pipeline of what to expect from serious games, the challenges that entails, some advice I've accrued throughout my time of working on it, and then just some general Q&A if people have questions. But yeah, so starting off pretty simple. What are serious games? Serious game is a game that is made for a purpose other than pure entertainment. What that means is basically any game that is made for uh, primarily usually it's usually education, training, or simulation. Though there can be some other um, applications of it. It should also be noted that uh, I did say serious games. Games do not have these serious games do not have to be video games specifically. There's a lot of examples of serious games that are card games, board games, anything like that. As long as they're a game that uh, is used for other purpose other than entertainment, it qualifies. I'll go over some examples that people may know of, along with some of my own as well. So starting off, Duolingo. regardless of how effective it may be, it is a serious game. It's a language learning software that people use. They gamify the experience a lot. You earn XP, complete like missions, and they kind of try to gamify the experience of learning a language as much as possible. It has led to it being really popular with a lot of people. Um, For my own example, for VA Medscape, that was the project I've been working on at VSGI. Um, it's made for nursing education and is put directly into the curriculum of Nursing 400 at George Mason. X-Plane is a flight simulation software that is used to commercially train actual pilots. As you can see, that guy's got a whole setup going there of what exactly it might be to fly an airplane. Um, to where he doesn't actually have to beat an airplane to actually test that out. Another kind of interesting example is that interactive exhibits like this at the Kennedy Space Center. A lot of museums have interactive exhibits like this that kind of serve as supplemental learning instruction to actual exhibits at museums. It is a good example of where serious games may be, even if you don't think they may be there. So, moving on to some development differences. Audience. So, for traditional games, um, your audience is going to be buying your game themselves with their own money. You need to make your game look appealing as possible, enough to where the player themselves want to spend money on it. With that said, for traditional games, players can and your audience can have wildly different motivations for playing the game, uh, and different expectations that go along with that as well. That's why a lot of games have difficulty options, to where at a gameplay sense, people who may have different experience playing games can enjoy a game. Uh, they may want a really hard game, or they might want a really easy game to enjoy the story. An example of this being a roguelike fan buying Hades because the gameplay and story looked interesting to them. Serious games differ a bit from this. Serious games are usually a requirement. Your audience are people who need to play the game. Those are the people who are going to be playing your game. They usually don't seek out serious games. There are examples like Duolingo that are serious games that uh, are commercial software that anyone can buy, but normally serious games are used supplemental for training purposes and education uh, requirements. It's also worth noting that while traditional games, really anyone can play your game in terms of their age or profession, serious games usually, for the most part, and what we'll be focusing on, consist of a certain age group or profession. So, for an example, a nursing student played Medscape because it's part of their class's curriculum. While the one thing that's worth noting with serious games, while the age group and profession can be pretty much set in stone, depending on where the serious game is set, the experience playing games can vary wildly, and that's something you really have to account for when designing serious games, which I'll go into a little bit later. So, success matrix or metrics. This is what basically defines success for these games. So for traditional games, it's measured by enjoyment and engagement of the players. That is what a lot of developers consider the success of their game and what they look for when they want to know if they did a good job. Alongside that, sales, retention, and reviews are also very important in determining success for traditional games as well. Uh, Basically asking the question, do players want to keep playing the game? That kind of define if the answer to that question basically defines the success of how that game did. So for serious games, instead of purely by enjoyment and engagement, it is a factor for serious game success. It's the part that's the most of all is the learning and trading outcomes. What were the objectives that the stakeholders wanted to achieve with the game, and did you meet them with the game? Yeah. So success is tied to whether those objectives are achieved. Did the was the training successful? Did it do a good job of supplanting whatever might have this software might have replaced? And is this something that uh, has tangible benefits to uh, training in by not using serious games? Did the achieve so what you're kind of asking here is did the experience achieve its purpose? So design constraints. This is a big part of serious game development that I learned. There's a lot of constraints that go into how serious games are designed. There's a couple of universal constraints that are going to be uh, kind of universal to any experience or any serious game that's developed. Um, the first off being, as we talked about this before, the design must support specific learning or training goals. It needs to, the context of the game is played will kind of shape all your design. Um, like I talked about before as well, the mechanics and interaction can't be too complicated. Because uh, a lot of you do not know the general experience of for serious games what the player may know in terms of the profession or what the serious game may be hoping to demonstrate, but you don't know their experience playing games. You could get someone who's played games for thousands of hours or someone who's never picked up a controller or used a mouse and keyboard simultaneously. You don't know. So that's a big thing you need to consider when making games. The deployment hardware is also a huge consideration. Where's your game being played? How is it being played? And specifically, how much time is it being played? All of this kind of goes into how your game is, you need to design your game. So an example for Medscape again. Um, when I went onto the project, or how we fit it into curriculum, was basically after a after a test, students would then play this game. So we only had about 15 minutes for the players to play the game. So regardless of the player's skill level in navigating games or playing games, they needed it to take around 15 minutes to complete. So that was a big kind of consideration when designing the cases that we created and led to a lot of decisions being revolved around specifically that point. All students need to be able to play the game. This goes for a lot of, or two main things. One, the game needs to be intuitive. It needs to, uh, if they haven't played games before, they need to be able to play it and complete it. But also, how we were deploying the game was basically in the classroom. Uh, it was already known that every student would have a computer or some kind of device, as that's how they were taking tests and doing everything else. So we already knew they would have a computer or something similar to that. Um, but we didn't know what the hardware of said computer. It may be a really good computer, it may be really bad. So with that being said, we had to basically design the game uh, for to basically try to work on any computer. So a lot of our code and graphics were designed to be for performative or performant above everything else. The last point, the game needed to include escape room elements. This was just a request, and kind of the one of the goals are Dr. Yannicka Quitlacool, our principal investigator on the grant, wanted to accomplish. This was her kind of primary inspiration. So going into the project, we knew it wanted to be like an escape room. So I'm going to go over some projects I've worked on. The first being Safety First. This was an OSHA training simulator that I developed apart with the business school to help train people for OSHA certification, uh, even if they weren't on the work site. So something they can do from home or anywhere else. It's worth noting. So as you can see, the game is in first person. Uh, that wasn't a decision that I was a part of. I joined the project partway through, but the perspective is worth noting because while Medscape, the game we made, was also is also kind of first person. This game, the requirements for OSHA certification require a lot of moving objects around, operating vehicles, inspecting workplaces to make sure they're safe. So making it a 3D game where you're able to walk around, pick up objects, interact with other objects as well, was a necessity to be able to implement the instruction that we needed to. This game was also developed in Unity, and again, it because of what we needed to accomplish, it hosted a lot of different styles and gameplay scenarios. The team included Cy Pappas, Sam Parker, Cooper Fink, and me. Those were the people I knew. while I was working on the project. There was a lot more that were associated with it with before and after I left the project as well. So for VA Medscape, this is the primary project I've been working on the last couple months as part of VSGI. I'll showcase a video and kind of go through the game in a second, basically showing off our second case we made for the game, and but also stopping it throughout just to talk about the development and certain aspects that I find interesting. It's also worth noting, so actually I'm just going to go into it and we'll talk about it as we go. Let me change the quality. Perfect. So we started the game with someone just entering their name. This gives a little bit of personalization to the player playing the game. It also serves a gameplay purpose later on that we'll see. The game starts with some tutorialization because, like I said, we have no idea if the people who played this game have played any game before. So things that you or me may find really intuitive or simple, like using the mouse to click on things, might actually be harder for other people or something they don't exactly grasp immediately. So I have a little video here just demonstrating to the player what exactly to do to advance in the scenario. So, so here we kind of see the result of the name entry we did before. They didn't know at the time, but the player will be called their name throughout the game, and doing that early was kind of a way to personalize it, but also make it so we know the player's name as well for just gameplay purposes and making it feel like they're kind of immersed in the scenario. It is also worth noting, while I go through this, this game was developed in Unity, but the art was actually developed in Unreal. So our artist, Alex Scrivener, um, to our development pipeline was very fast. So there wasn't a lot of turnaround time we had to do things. So our what we ended up doing was he made all the models, put it in Unreal, and from there, I would then go in and basically use the rendering camera in Unreal to take snapshots of each of the screens from our different camera positions and basically kind of cut out each of the different parts of the game, the characters, the environments, to make it work as we would then take these high resolution screenshots, put them in Unity, because having that 3D environment uh, rendered and looking very pretty uh, is not something that WebGL based platforms can do, let alone uh, most people's computers that were in the class. So, um, taking these environments and then making them 2D and putting them in Unity to work in WebGL was kind of our main pipeline of how we made the game look nice, but also made it performative or performant and work with everyone's computer. So here we just have some little instruction about how the player is supposed to interact with the game. The primary kind of way they do this, or one of the primary ways, is the EHR tablet. Originally, this was a clipboard, but throughout development, we actually had some of our co-investigators on the grant, other professors from other medical schools around Virginia and Mason mentioned that tablets and EHRs, the electronic health record, is primarily what nurses use at this point to collect patient information, verify, submit, all of that. So changing that to the tablet was kind of something that happened midway through development, but things like that are something that will happen through serious game development, and uh, it being kind of while the art style is cartoony, being close to reality in terms of the simulation aspects was one of our main goals. So changing it to that was a big priority for us. Here he's just giving us a little bit more information about how to interact with it, giving us some direction to go to the lobby and perform triage on the patients. So here, this step is something we kind of shared with our first case we developed, where there's five patients in a lobby, and you need to perform triage on them, which basically means looking at all their symptoms and seeing who needs help the most, who's in the most distress, who needs help. So here they go and visit each patient, collect their patient forms. Um, as you can kind of see in this gameplay video, this is something that I'm kind of speeding through. One, because I know the answer, but two, it's just something that kind of came intrinsically to me. But one thing I didn't realize while developing it was how much time players would spend on that, um, which is worth noting because of our strict time frame we had to develop. The It was interesting to see. Well, that I think took about like 15, 20 seconds for me to click through. Um, Players would spend upwards of like 5 minutes just looking through all the sheets and making sure they were doing it correctly. So it's worth noting how much QA and testing is important for this kind of a game or serious games in general because of your target audience being uh, people who probably aren't in the same field as you even more so don't really know exactly what the player may do in that scenario. So, because this is the first time the player is going to use the EHR tablet, I also give them some simple instructions about how to interact with it for this step. So, what they do here is with the EHR tablet, they're able to look through each of the patients and select the patient to see if they were correct or incorrect for this kind of assessment. The correct answer here being Joseph Keys. We have a little cutscene that plays just saying that uh, Joseph Keys and his daughter are being escorted to the exam room. Uh, we're exploring a bit at the hospital, and then we go to the exam room. One thing that's worth noting, and we was a tricky balance to strike with this game, along with most serious games, is implementing the instructional and learning objectives while also making it interactive. And also fit within the time constraints we had. So, because of the time constraints, not every kind of learning objective we were able to make interactive. So, an example here is when you go into the exam room, you get a very quick question or a little quiz question about ICP, which is increased intracranial pressure. Or the answer here being change in the level of consciousness. The player's given some feedback about why that was correct, and now they can kind of proceed onto the uh, more gamey parts of the exercise. So this is kind of worth noting. This dialogue here, uh, where this step is uh, supposed to be verifying his identity. Um, at this point, the this second case, the first case was already played by players at this point. Everyone that was in the classrooms that is playing this second case has played the first case. During the first case, the patient did not have any like head trauma, so they were able to confirm their date of birth. One thing we thought was kind of cool about doing this because of his head trauma and not being able to remember certain details, he gets his date of birth wrong and his daughter needs to correct it. This was kind of one way of one just spicing up the scenario a little bit, make it a little bit of a surprise, but also showcasing the state the patient's in, as that was really important to make sure that the player is understands the kind of mind space that the patient is in. This patient is not getting his birthday correct. He doesn't know when he was born. So that's going to inform some decisions they make later on as well. So, this kind of next part plays double duty for explaining how to use items in the game, but also proper medical procedure that needs to be performed in the ER. So before any like medical intervention or medications are administered, um, the player or the patient's identity needs to be verified. And aside from checking their name and date of birth, they their wristband usually needs to be scanned to make sure they're giving it to the right person. So um, here we've given the player an ID scanner. They can interact with it to see exactly what it does in case they have any questions. Um, And here we have them bring the ID scanner to hover over the wristband to confirm their ID. So again, that step let the player know how to use items as they'll be doing it later on, but also um, how to follow that proper medical procedure as that's something that was required and that we could not skip. We could have automated the process, made it maybe not an item, but it's something that needed to happen to keep with the simulation aspect of the game and keep it realistic. So we had a little cutscene there explaining that Mr. Keys was placed in was had his vitals placed and is now being monitored. Um, at this point, the player needs to perform a Glasgow coma assessment, or a Glasgow coma scale assessment using the EHR tablet. To us, that probably doesn't mean much, but what that basically means is determining the level of consciousness of the patient. So here, the player can ask some questions. You get some incoherent mumbling, and with the EHR tablet, they basically this is how the Glasgow coma scale works in real life as well. They give a score based on the response that the player gives. So as you can see, we asked him to open his eyes, and he can't. Can he lift his arms? He can't. Oh, that was a little kind of thing, animation we did. Performing the sternal rub, it is basically pressing your knuckle against the sternum of the patient and kind of pressing hard. And when that happens, Mr. Keys kind of jolts a bit. He flexes his arms and opens his eyes. So the eye-opening response for him, because of that, he didn't open it spontaneously or to speech. He did it to pain. So that means that score was a two there. His verbal response, we couldn't understand what he was saying. So incomprehensible sounds it is. For the best motor response, he does not obey commands, but he does withdraw from pain. So that was the answer to that objective. So the next part of what we need to do is a pupil exam. But uh, to do that, we need to find the pen light. And this is the part our players, I think, enjoyed the most. This is where we tried to include the actual kind of escape room elements of the game. Um, so to do that, find the pen light in the exam room and perform a pupil exam on Mr. Keys. If we go to this cabinet, as you can see, there's a padlock on it. So we can't access whatever's in there. But if we go to computer, we can find half of a sticky note. So half of a sticky note, the other half should be somewhere in the room. We give them a little hint about um, that it should be somewhere else in the room. Look in the trash can. There it is. Now we have the full sticky note. So with that full sticky note, one of our learning objectives was to make sure the player can calculate CPP, which is I don't exactly remember the acronym off the top of my head, but uh, performing that calculation with the BP and ICP was something that we needed to uh, have. Um, and our way of kind of going about that was with this cabinet code. So the player uses the BP and ICP to calculate the CPP, in that answer being the cabinet code. So the answer it to is 118. So once they do that, they get the pen light. So with the pen light now, they can perform an eye exam. Um, so using the pen light, they can kind of see the different response to the pupils the patient has. Um, our art style is pretty cartoony, which players enjoyed. They said it helped kind of relieve the stress of the scenario, and as you can kind of see as well, as you highlight the different eyes with the pen light, this pupil moves a lot slower than this pupil as well when it's highlighted over. So the pupillary response would be slowly or briskly. So this is another part that a learning objective we had to fulfill that we had to basically just um, use a quiz for the diagnostic test, um, which one should be performed after head trauma. The answer here being a CT scan. For every answer they get, the player gets feedback about why what they chose was correct or incorrect, as well. Here we have a little cutscene just explaining that Mr. Keys is taken for a CT scan. and we're supposed to go to the ICU room to prepare the bed for his arrival. One thing the players are supposed to go into this knowing is the correct angle of the bed. So while this isn't something we're not teaching this inside the game, this is something we're demonstrating knowledge of in terms of how, or just making sure they know that the angle is correct for a patient specifically returning from a ventriculostomy, which Mr. Keys is in right now. So, returning from a ventriculostomy, the other kind of learning objective is leveling this transducer, which needs to be at ear level. So the player does that by holding and dragging the transducer and clicking on that. The next stage of the game is some questions that we needed to include just to make sure they understand uh, the different kind of safety procedures of some medications. So we have another quiz question, but unlike the other ones, it is a kind of more matching instead of just clicking one of four answers. I'm probably going to skip through the rest of this. This is a different kind of question, just selecting the different electrolytes included in CMP. Um, Perfect. So I'm gonna skip through here. This is just another one more question about CPP and making sure they can calculate it correctly. Um, and that's kind of the end of the interactive parts of the game. As soon as they perform this last discharge quiz, the case is completed. They get a final score. We actually collect this in data and put it in it's automatically sent into a spreadsheet that we can kind of view and make sure the player or see how each player is doing. The time it took. For me, it took 5 minutes. For others, it took way longer. But that's kind of just going through the game. I'm going to go into more of the kind of production side from this point. So the production pipeline, what it kind of looks like for serious games. So, what happens first is the objectives. So the before any before anything else, the learning objectives need to be defined. What is the stakeholder looking to achieve with the game? What are the learning objectives? What is the outcome they want? This part will most likely be done. This will probably be figured out before you even become part of the picture. If you're developing serious games, or it might be something that you help decide if it's a serious game that you're looking to create, is and not some other stakeholder that's coming to you to create. The next is the concept phase. So, what is the concept of the game, and how do we transfer or translate the objectives into gameplay? This is a big kind of component of what you need to do to make the game. Like I said before, Medscape is a kind of point and click adventure game because we need to make sure it's able to be used by anyone on any kind of platform. But Safety First was a first person game. So the concept kind of ties into what kind of genre the game is that we might expect. Next is prototyping the game, testing the gameplay, and how the approach that you're doing the instruction actually works. What needs to be changed, what works, everything like that happens during this phase. One big thing you need to check is if the instruction and the gameplay are clear to the player. Unlike traditional games, if a player gets stuck, that's basically an instant fail state. If you're stuck on a puzzle in a traditional game, uh, you can maybe look up the answer, kind of bash your head into the wall, do something to maybe figure it out or brute force it. If that happens in a serious game or a game that's meant to train or educate, that's really, really bad. They don't have, there's no online resources or, walkthroughs about how to play the game. It's instructional. Doing that is supposed to be the action, figuring out how to do it is the game itself. Um, but and this is something to really consider because yet again we do for the most part we don't know um their experience playing games, so that's something to really consider when in this prototype stage. Review and validation after the prototype phase. Excuse me. You need to check with your stakeholders and the testers for your accuracy and alignment with the objectives. Does it fulfill these objectives? What needs to be improved, what doesn't? And then after that, just revising from there. Um, this looks kind of linear here, but in reality, you're going to be hopscotching between a lot of these different parts, a lot. With this kind of using this diagram, this kind of whole objectives concept prototype, review, and then revision happened for the game as a whole, but also for each individual case we created. We had the basic objectives of the project we wanted to complete, but also the objectives of each case we wanted to develop first. The first case being um, the patient has some heart disease or some problems with their heart, and the player needs to learn how to treat that and identify it. The second case being how to identify increased intracranial pressure and how to treat with that. So depending on the serious game that is being developed, there can be a lot of different permutations of this kind of pipeline. So challenges that this includes. Oh, sorry, I did skip over something. Let me go back a bit. I just do want to highlight the amazing team that worked on Medscape. Dr. Yannicka Kwitlakul, me, Alex Scrivener, who's our 3D artist, Jacob Enfield, Tarian Gineb, Amanda Brooks, Gretchen Worsna, and Michelle Edmonds. These were all amazing people that worked to make the game. And one thing that's worth noting with this game particularly and serious games in general is this game is funded by a grant called 4VA, which meant the game was funded by this grant. It was made just to be put into curriculum. It wasn't made particularly to make money. It was just to enrich the classroom experience and help the experience from there. Which I found amazing to work alongside with these people because of the passion that they showed, and the objectives that they wanted to achieve because of this. So going back, so challenges that might be faced during serious game development, balancing engagement and accuracy. This is a big kind of sticking point, as you want to make sure the game is engaging, but you don't want to just be berating the player with quiz questions. And that happened to us a little bit during testing, where we realized, hey, we just want to make sure this isn't a dressed up quiz. We want to make sure this is engaging and interactive, as we are making a game. So translating real world procedures into gameplay. This was particularly important to this project, as with these medical procedures, if we're teaching it the wrong way, that could be potentially life-threatening. So the validation phase was something we spent a lot of time on, making sure everything was correct medically. And while some of our graphics may have been not realistic, the actual procedure we followed was. So yeah, that kind of follows up on dealing with revisions based on the needs of the education. A lot of the time, we needed to shift our game plan, or we may have just developed part of the game, but then we realized, wait, that's not actually how they do it anymore. We need to do it like this, and kind of we needed to revive purely based on educational needs. It wasn't someone playing a game and then realizing, wait, I want to do this mechanic. It seems cool. It was the revisions are based on needing to fulfill that educational need and making sure it's accurate to proper procedure and what you're trying to accomplish. So what lessons have I learned from serious game development, and what can be learned? Clarity is over everything else. I talked about it a bit before, but um, confusion is a fail state. If they're confused by the educational aspects of the game, or they're trying to figure out a problem, that's fine. They need that's part of the game experience, is figuring out and making sure they learn. But if they're confused by specifically interacting with the game, that's really bad. You don't want the game to disappear in terms of, the controller like melting in your hands, feeling really natural to play. You want to make sure the game doesn't obstruct the learning experience in any way, which is something you really need to consider with serious games. So the other thing is how to communicate with non-technical stakeholders. What that means is communicating with people who aren't don't work in game development. So our team was me and Alex Scrivener. We were the only two game developers as part of the project. Everyone else was our basically consultants, or our principal and co-investigators, who gave their technical and medical experience to the project, and communicating with them was a big part of every meeting, and figuring out how to do that was something that I learned throughout my kind of experience. And what's worth noting about that is the best advice I can give is you need to make sure you translate. gameplay into actual impact. The main thing at the end of the day that um, what you and your non-technical stakeholders need to care about is the user experience. What is what you're doing actually contributing to the gameplay and what the user is experiencing? They don't need to know. Um, the squash and stretch you do on animations or how specific scripts work. They need to know how what you're doing um, correlates to the user experience and how that achieves learning objectives. So again, dealing with revisions based on educational needs is something that's really important as well. Some advice I've learned, and I can give based on this. Um, Learning to design for a purpose, not just for fun. This was something kind of big out the gate. Is we would have a lot of good, like fun ideas or things that may be fun for interaction, but the interactions either took too long, they didn't fit our timeline, or various other kind of complications. But first and foremost, you need to design for a purpose. Everything you design, everything you create is needs to be for a reason. You need to make sure that everything you're doing accomplishes a certain goal within the project. Either that be immersion, learning, making sure that you're learning, or anything else that makes the user experience better. Not particularly just for fun, but achieving those goals as well. Get good at communicating with non-game people. Like I talked about before, you just need to make sure you can communicate your intentions with non-game people, and explain your ideas clearly to people outside of game development. Um, Through the process, you'll likely need to explain a lot of design choices you make and how they support the objectives of the project. Another, you should do your research. Um, you don't have to do this. Depending on the subject matter, you might not need to. It might be able to be covered by other people, but I found it, as someone who is a little squeamish with some medical stuff, doing my research was kind of a blessing and a curse. It helped immerse me a lot more in the subject matter. Helps me understand what the player may actually know going into the mod each case we made, and contribute a little bit to discussions that were had about medical instruction. So if you do work in serious games, whatever your game is pertaining, I would advise to do your own research and immerse yourself a bit in exactly what the subject matter entails, uh, on top of just the objectives you need to get for the project. A lot of that being said, serious games still need game design. Uh, So don't assume that educational values just full on replace good design. A serious game still needs pacing, it needs engagement, it needs feedback, and it needs a strong player experience to be successful. Um, while a lot of these things may look different than traditional games, a lot of the same kind of principles of design still apply. It might not have been worth you may not have noticed it too much, but just including little bits of juice in the experience helped a lot. And while we don't know exactly how much it helped or players really felt it, we know that they enjoyed the experience, and I believe that was a part of it. Things just like when the cursor is moving around, it sways a little bit. When you click on buttons, they make a satisfying sound, and also click down to kind of sell the impact that you're giving the players. Things like that you can even within kind of serious game uh, development like ethos, you can add fun and juice to that. Can't stress it enough. Clarity over everything. Um, you confusion with the game itself needs to be avoided. If the player gets stuck, that's it. So if you take anything from this, and if you ever want to design serious games, make sure that everything is clear to the player. Um, there's a lot of like jokes about games that put like yellow paint everywhere, and unfortunately, that's kind of something you need to think about when developing serious games, as you need to make sure the player knows what to do and how to do it. Um, as you don't want a situation where they know what to do from an education standpoint, but they don't know what to do in the game itself. So, That's kind of my presentation. I don't re It might have ran a bit long. I'm not sure, but if anyone has any questions, I would be happy to field anything.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, this is time for question and answers. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask Alex directly. So you can turn on your microphone and ask, or you can leave your questions on the chat room.
Oh yeah, let me open the chat. Yeah, as Professor Casey said in the chat, a lot of players will not be gamers, so you need to make sure you account for that as well. That I think alone is like the biggest kind of hurdle with serious game development, is making sure you design for people who have never picked up a controller before. And still, I think we could have done a better job at it.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's always a pain.
yes, yes.
Think about
Oh,
like having your game, like your regular game played by your mom if she's not a gamer, and it's like,
exactly.
oh my God.
That's a great way to think about it. That's a good analogy. I see a question from Xavier. So, how much of the info in the medical game was provided by the people y'all worked for? Was it mostly provided, or was there a lot of original research involved? A lot of the learning objectives and what we needed to accomplish was all provided by our the people we worked with. They were great about fielding any questions we had, and even if something wasn't provided or we needed clarification, they were always open to uh, field any questions we had. But though a lot of original just research did end up going because we had to make sure all the models for the game were correct. So a lot of research just finding different medical instruments at different angles and researching just different hospitals setups, even things like let me go back, but like the tiniest thing you might think of this doorway was something we needed to revise. As originally we had the doorway swing open, but someone said, "Oh wait, um, hospital doors don't do that because of the carts that always, roll around bringing patients everywhere." So we had to make the door swing inward instead. So simple things like that, were still our blind spots that we didn't research and. Or that we thought we researched everything, but we still had to figure out. But there was a lot of research involved with that we had to do, but our partners were amazing in helping out in any way. But thank you for the question. This is great. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we definitely need to make sure we complied with basic like work regulations and also just making sure that even simple things fit within the actual space. Oh, I see Alex Grislev has a question.
Yeah, so I thought the presentation was very interesting, but one thing I wanted to ask about was the process that you mentioned of developing the art and how you had to bring it into Unreal
Hmm.
and convert it to Unity to optimize it for like WebGL. What was that? Does that mean that it was all just like backgrounds that were like rendered images, or like could you explain a little more about that process?
Yeah, totally. It might seem a little confusing from the offset. So, Alex Scrivener had more experience in Unreal than Unity, so we knew how to make everything look great in Unreal right off the bat. So we wanted to so we had him make all the models, put all the animations and everything into Unreal, and then there's a there's a rendering technique in Unreal where you can select an object. And then take a high res screenshot in Unreal through the camera angle, and it only renders the objects you select. So through that different camera angle, I can go back to the gameplay. So for this scene, um, you can kind of see when I highlight over this Tommy Jacob. He is he's a screenshot. Each of these characters is their own screenshot, their own individual screenshot that in Unity are just images on a rectangular or on the canvas. And in Unreal, this is a 3D environment, but I took a picture of the background and then took a picture of each of these characters, as well as some background elements. Like you can see here, this bench is in front of this character, but this character needs to kind of move independently. Still. So I took a picture of the bench and placed that in front of them. Uh, so to make sure that the kind of depth still works. So um, with taking these high resolution screenshots, we were able to kind of get the fidelity of um, kind of a 3D game, but with the performance of a 2D game. It's not the exact same as like pre-rendered backgrounds from like let's say Resident Evil or other games for the time on the N64 and PlayStation 1, but it's a similar concept to where instead of just rendering out all the 3D models using this is a way performative method. And it is worth noting on top of this, on top of the screenshots, I included some post processing on it as well. Um, Added some God rays that would shine down, some dust particles that would float around, just to kind of sell even more that this is a 3D space even if it really isn't under the hood. But thank you. That was a great question.
Yeah, thank you. That was very interesting. Like assembling it basically like a 2D environment, even though it's a 3D. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. And a lot of work was figuring out how to exactly do that. Oh, I see. Maya's got a question about the working with the SMEs. So we met every Thursday, um, uh, which basically the meetings consisted of me showcasing our current build of the game, how much things have changed, and as we kind of went through everything, they would look at it and make sure the content was or just verify the content, make sure everything was correct, and other things just like me talking about our plans moving forward and other things like that. But kind of talking about the people in the project again. Uh, our meetings were basically every week, but it was amazing just seeing as all of the medical professionals a part of the project were doing so basically as volunteers. They weren't getting paid for it. And it was amazing seeing the passion that they had for the project despite of that. They were taking time out of their day, time out of their schedule as educators, which I can't imagine they have much free time, um, to work on this project that was just benefiting the classroom. So that was amazing to see, and the kind of energy they had during those meetings was definitely infectious. It made me care about the project even more. Oh, and yeah, for feedback forms, and other kind of things, we after each class played the game, part of the feedback or part of their what they were supposed to do was fill out a feedback form about the game. So, how they enjoyed the experience, what they thought of it in terms of a game, what they thought of it in terms of a learning program, everything like that was part of the feedback form. And we're actually discussing that this Thursday, discussing all the feedback we got, and we've put it into kind of some qualitative feedback analysis stuff that I don't really know how it works, but they do. And we'll be kind of going over where we can revise it even from there. But yeah, thank you, Maya. Thank you for the great question. And thank you for everyone for making it out today. I really appreciate it. It's been nice to talk about this project with more people.
Well, actually, maybe we have one time for one more question, and there's one more question in the chat.
Perfect. Yeah, so I see Alex got another great question. The importance of clarity. Um, so examples of yellow paint that you had to specifically add to ensure clarity. Um, let's see if I can think of any that are visible in the game. These tutorial videos are definitely kind of a big one. Let me uh as we just to make sure the player knows where to go. Um, they we needed to just there wasn't a we could have had a better way to kind of do it other than play a video, make it so they can't continue for a couple seconds, so they need to view the instruction and then continue going. Um, there's some other aspects, just I think in the beginning, it doesn't have to be very obstructive as well. Um, you can see it for like a little second before the mouse hovers over it, but there's a little icon uh, when you're supposed to talk to the receptionist that basically says he has something to say. That once you talk to him, he doesn't have it anymore. So that shows that you don't need to talk to him anymore. He doesn't really have anything else to say. But just simple things like that to guide the player um, were basically added in kind of every step of production, as we would have more people play it, more people who didn't understand maybe how to play this kind of game. Um, like originally, um, we had proceed to the patient waiting area. We just had a this kind of a green arrow here. We didn't have the thing waiting area. And including that was kind of a people were still confused, even though there was nothing else on the screen to click. They were still confused about what to do. They didn't know that they needed to click here to go to the waiting area. Even though the receptionist also says proceed right uh, to the waiting area, including the text waiting area. They seemed like a little redundant, but it helped clear up any other confusion that players had. So a lot of stuff like that, kind of double, triple, quadruple redundancies, making sure that information is able to be um, taken in by the player was a big part of developing this. But thank you for the great question.
Okay, time is up, and then thank you so much for Alex and others for joining us today. And once we process this video, it will be available online through our website. And thank you again, Alex, and
Perfect. Thank you
have a
so much for having me.
wonderful rest of the day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, everyone.